So today we're going to talk about windows.
Windows. Today's the final window day for us.
We've been waiting to talk about windows.
We have since October or maybe November. Yes.
Well, since the first window. And I don't, for those who aren't completely immersed in van conversions, which most of our peer group is not.
Correct.
There's nothing like the look on their face when you say, oh yeah, no, I didn't come with any of these windows. We just put them in.
We're gonna put in windows.
And they
yes, all of your
seem like a thing you can do
your
at
relatives,
home.
your friends are gonna look at you really funny when they see a van with metal walls and you say, I'm gonna put windows in those walls.
They say, shouldn't you go to a professional for that?
Right.
Which
Yeah.
seems like a good idea to me, I will say.
Right.
You've always been a figure stuff out, very handy, so I had to put a lot of faith in that. And I kept saying, you haven't really lived until you've put a gigantic hole in the side of a Mercedes. You truly haven't experienced life. And I have, you have a track record of tearing apart our new cars. They're almost always pre-owned. The minute they come home.
Oh, to put in stereo stuff.
To put in stereo stuff. So you bring your pretty new car home, and then you come out 2 hours later and you've torn out the dashboard, which is
yes,
a little traumatizing. So I guess I was kind of used to this, at least.
Summer Easy, your particular car, yeah, that was a whole dash tear apart. But
even years ago, the Mazda, you did that.
Yeah.
Like you tore it. You like, I think the whole headliner was down. So yes. So what have we done since buying the van window wise?
The left window, the right window. So the right window being where the slider is.
The
Yeah.
passenger
side. And the two big rear door windows.
And it was funny. You said, I'm going to start with the big door because if I mess up, we can always replace the door.
Technically, you could always replace the door.
I
don't want to know how much a slider door either costs, but well, there's always junkyards. But yeah, but technically that is the case, right? So that's why I did that. This is the first one. I also did that one by myself when you weren't here. That we're going to talk about top tips at the end.
Hilarious, yes. But let me just tell you, you haven't lived until you put a hole in the side of your van. You really haven't lived until you're away from home at a conference while your husband's trying to put the first window in, regularly calling or texting to ask you where is X, Y, or Z. And my favorite part is when you said, well, they said we should use... How much did they say you should use of this goo?
2.5.
You said, they said it would take 2.5 tubes of the goo.
No, 1.5.
1.5? No. It was a lot. Anyway, whatever it was, you didn't use all of it, and you said, I don't think that'll be a problem. It was a problem, my friends. Why was it a problem? What happened?
A small leak.
Because it leaked. But that'll be other tip because we did fix that. So we're not going to be doing a video that's a how-to because, as we mentioned, there are 16
many
how-tos. Yep. But we are going to share our experience.
Yep, and we have some really good tips. So if you're out there watching videos on how to put in your windows beforehand. We have some.
This is like the supplementary.
Yeah, this is the supplemental video for that. We have some good tips on what some of even the really good videos don't quite tell you.
Okay, so let's talk about some basics. Where did we get the windows?
We got them from Van Windows Direct, which is a super popular place to get van windows. They have pretty much all the windows you could want in all the different styles you could want and multiple brands. And in this case, we actually used the Van Windows Direct branded windows. Yeah.
Which always makes me think of VW.
Right.
Okay, so as we said, we're not going to do a step-by-step how-to video because there are a bazillion of them. But we are going to share some of the lessons we learned because, as is typical for projects like this, when you don't do it professionally, by the time you get it all figured out,
I know, right?
You're all done. You never have to do it again.
You finish your last window, and you're like, wow,
I got it locked.
That went really smooth and clean. Too bad we're never doing this again.
Right.
Maybe the next van, but...
I mean, these two, like, this one looks like a murder scene. This one is nice and clean on the... Just from, like, the black gook.
Yeah, the black urethane, the black window urethane is really sticky and gets everywhere. You try to, as you're cleaning it up, and so, yeah, that one just has... Of course, that's all getting covered, so...
Okay, well, so we're going to talk about tips. I'm going to start with 3 tips that we learned on the very first day of the very first window.
Okay.
Tip number 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to take you longer than you think it's going to.
Agreed.
So, like, you started that, you worked that day, and then you came home, and you're like, I'm going to get this done. And even though it was the summer, we had a long day, it was super tight.
Yeah,
and
I didn't start it until 3:30 in the afternoon, right?
That was stressing you out.
Yep.
So that was number 1.
Yeah.
And just one at a time. The idea that you can, like, knock these all out at once. Just do one.
Just one
do
at a
it
time.
Right.
Yeah.
You need a second set of hands.
And
like for every piece of it, forget the big piece of glass, but just for the, like, can you go grab the thing? Where is my tape? Can you go grab this? Can you hold this? Can you, like, I just, this is, even these little ones, it helped to have someone, me. This is what I contribute, is I hold things. And follow the directions. It's not, well, no.
They don't really give you directions.
Okay, but if they give you directions, like use a 2.5 or however much goo.
Oh, sure.
That's not a suggestion.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's all I have to contribute for tips now. I'm just the assistant. So do you want to go through each set, like kind of to talk about each set at a time? And what you learned with each step?
Sure. I guess on the...
Because we started with the
slider door big window, and I did that one by myself.
The first
one. And I had the suction cup handles, which is, no matter how many people you have, you need those suction cup handles.
Yeah, use those.
That window is not all that heavy, so actually I was able to get that done. That wasn't really the problem. It was more that when it's your very first window, you're trying to figure out the size of the bead of the urethane that you're putting around, how you're applying the primer, all that sort of stuff that you haven't done at all. Just kind of gets a little overwhelming.
Where it goes, because like the window, the glass covers more of the metal than the hole.
Correct.
And so I guess part of me was like, oh, you put it along the edge of the glass, but you don't. You put it along the edge.
No, it was along the edge of the cutout.
Yeah, the cutout. So there's like...
Theoretically, you could put it along the edge of the glass.
But that's not... But I mean, it's just interesting when you think about that. There's actually some built-in like water flow, like that these aren't...
Yeah, you also have to know that on bonded windows like this, they stand proud of the van body, so there's a gap there. The urethane that you are putting down is really thick, and you are not going to squash this down. So these windows are going to stick up a little bit, and that urethane bead and bond will then become your seal. So as the water will go behind that glass where it's sticking above the sheet metal, and then it flows around that urethane.
Right.
You don't think of it as the glass going right up against the metal.
Yeah. Now, because you were short on the amount of urethane, we did have a small leak when we tested that first window.
Right.
And so then we got to Google or YouTube videos for when there's a glass leak, and actually there's a lot of those too.
Yeah, luckily it was at the very top of the top of the glass, and so that was easy to fix because we basically used a windshield sealer silicone type of, I'm not sure what, I think it was a silicone, but it just I was able to squeeze the tube down that gap at the top of the window, and it flowed down to where our leak was, and it worked. Yeah.
That was a little stressful though.
Yeah.
Reading, especially when you saw some of the videos that were like, so then we took it to a glass company, or then we smashed it, and it's
if you had a side leak or if you had a bottom leak, it would be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, we were very lucky.
You wouldn't be able to just drip down the sealant from a bottom leak.
Now there's also this stuff that's around
the trim around the sheet metal.
Plastic, but I didn't realize there's metal in there.
There's a metal band inside. So that stuff is very, very stiff, and you have to open it up a little bit to get it over the metal. You will otherwise just be cursing and struggling to get that. Even though the sheet metal is not that thick, it does not want to just press on there and pop on. It really, really helped to open that seam up a a bit, and then.
Well, because it was going over 2 layers of. It's not going
in
over
some cases for the front windows. It goes over 2 layers of metal.
2 layers. So add to that, it's super tight, and you're not just slipping it between one. So that was.
That's true. Right. You're right.
That was. I think
that's right. That was the problem. It was the double layer.
First one that took you forever.
Yeah.
Because you hadn't figured out to just push.
It probably took an hour and a half.
Window scraper or something where we just slid it through, or a screwdriver where we just slid it through to just give it a.
Just open it up a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second one went.
And then the second one went no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you had the hand on the urethane bead, and just getting it a nice solid bead, it went a lot better. Yeah. And we had no other problems actually after that too.
Yeah. Did you have any? And what's nice about these two and those two is there's a hole for them. There's an obvious, you're just following the cutout of if they were factory installed.
Correct.
Windows. So it's not quite. There's not a lot of mystery to it, and it's actually kind of hard to. But what are some of the tools you maybe used that you didn't expect, or? What were some of the tools that you found to be really useful? What's this?
Oh, so the biggest tip I have is that you're going to see a lot of people using just a regular file. After they cut the hole in the metal, they use a file to sort of smooth down that rough metal. I cannot say enough about this flap wheel sander that you just put on your drill. This one actually now has a nice groove in the middle from going over that sheet metal. But this, this just makes such quick work of it, and you just go around the seam, and you can run, and if you run your finger along it, and it's just smooth. You're not going to cut yourself because it's that smooth. It is, and it's so abrasive that if you really need to say extend a little corner that you just didn't cut far enough in, instead of coming back with the jigsaw, which can make more of a mess, this will actually take it down relatively quickly, and you can actually extend your lines on the edges, not so quickly that it gets out of control that suddenly you're going to create a groove into it. But yeah, you work at it for 2-3 minutes and you'll extend it a 1/4 inch if you want. So. And
I did have a couple of people, like my dad, who said, well, how do you cut a hole? And I said, I think he just uses a jigsaw.
Yeah,
most blade you use?
Yeah, most people you're going to see on YouTube are using a jigsaw, and there's a couple people who will swear by other tools, and I got to say the jigsaw was it, and I tried a couple other tools. Air tools are great as long as you have a 80-100 gallon air tank. Air tools are air hungry, and unless you have one of those shop-sized tanks, it's just not going to work.
And again, we're not doing this professionally, so we're not going to buy this equipment for it.
The jigsaw, a cordless jigsaw I used a Bosch metal blade, and it just went through with ease. It just wanted to just go right through. It also had really nice control cutting the line. It was great.
Now on these windows, you also drilled 50 holes all around the edge, and then you jigsawed from hole to hole to hole.
Yep.
Is that just so that it was easy to follow the path?
It was easy to follow the path because there's an inset seam on the inside of the van showing you where the outline of the window is.
Right.
That just then showed me on the outside where that should be, okay. Which is completely different from the bunk windows.
Yes. Okay, so we did those and then we stopped.
So we did the two sides and the two backs, and then we stopped. So it is right now. It is middle of February. It was a record high 60 yesterday. It is 50 today, and in 2 days we're going to get a foot of snow. So we had this window to get these bunk windows in. In case you're wondering about temperatures, you can use the window urethane. The urethane itself should be above 50 degrees, so just keep that inside. But the air temperature and the metal temperature just has to be above 40, and then you're good to go. So you can do it in fairly cool weather.
So the windows we got these bunk windows. The idea is that our bed is going to be here, and we wanted windows for a little extra light. We wanted a little ventilation. We wanted to be able to look outside.
Yeah, the main reason for the bunk windows is so you can. In bed, you can see out the sides of the van to see what might be going on if you hear something. And then the biggest thing is that we can slide these open. There's a screen, and then when the roof fan is on, that provides the cross breeze. So without a way to open a window, and you're not going to just you don't want to really crack your front windows in the cab. So you need another side window to open to let air through, or two fans or two roof fans.
But they are more challenging because you have to decide where they go.
Yes, they can go anywhere.
Right.
They can go anywhere in the overall panel where the big window would go if you had to put a big window in.
And so for the last week, as you prepared for this, you were making your prop that just fell.
Yep.
You were making a template. I have one suggestion for Van Windows Direct, which is send a template for the whole.
Yep, so this
it just seemed like you had to do a lot of work for something that should have just been...
I made basically an inner and an outer. So the inner one is where that was going to be the hole that we cut in the side of the van. That's the size that the window is going to go in. And the outer actually represents the outer glass of the window itself so that we could hold that up and get a visual, visual cue of where that was what it was gonna look like if it was lined up, if it was even, and so forth.
And then in this, there are now some holes. And what did you do with those?
So we taped this up onto the inside of the van where we wanted it, and I drilled 2 holes through the middle. Now, obviously, this whole piece of metal's coming out, so it didn't really matter where those were. They could just be anywhere. And then we put screws to those holes, and you're going to see this on many installation videos. This template came to the outside of the van through, and then got put onto the screws were sticking through the side of the van. We put the cardboard template over, and now we knew where to draw the line on the outside. So I just drew the Sharpie around this template on the outside, put my masking tape down, and I knew where to cut out.
Okay. And then you used, so there's like 3, we used rubbing alcohol to clean the metal off.
Rubbing alcohol, yep.
And then you use what's the black stuff that goes on before the urethane?
That's the primer.
Okay.
And so one big tip about the primer is, I will grab one.
Go grab it. Okay, that's the primer.
So on the primer, now you may get a tube like this with a foam applicator that screws under the top, or you may have a bottle with a foam brush that you pull out.
This all came with the window. We got the window.
Well, yeah, and I bought this sort of with the, I bought you buy the urethane separately.
Okay.
So I made sure I got all this stuff with it. The biggest thing is this is a sponge on the end, and whether you're using this or the sponge brush that you pull out of the can, it is very, very easy for this to get oversaturated, and as you're applying it on the outside around on the sheet metal for it to drip. So you barely need to get this sponge black, and then you'll kind of feel it. You can always give it a tiny squeeze to get more, but you don't want it to drip. If it drips, this stuff sets up almost immediately. It dries almost immediately. So you don't want to have it dripping down. So very, very lightly. You can always go around with a second coat. So that's just a big, big thing to watch.
We did discover that even when we put this into a plastic bag, the sponge dried out by the next day. So we couldn't replace the sponge, which is fine.
Yeah.
But just if you're thinking you can reuse
the sponge the next day.
There's plenty of goo in there.
Yeah, you can't.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about the urethane that you're laying down to apply the window.
Yes.
So they come with plastic nozzles, and there's going to be, it's very subtle, but there's going to be a V-notch. That V-notch is right at the end. You actually have to cut the tip off square and then cut your V-notch in. So
you cut the V-notch
yes.
in?
Yep. So it's sort of indented in the plastic of the nozzle, but you have to cut it with a razor blade. And then
it's like cut here lines.
Sort of cut here lines.
Okay.
The biggest thing about that urethane is that if you've ever worked with caulk, like most people have, you think that you can lay down caulk and you can, it's not great to stop, but you can stop and restart. You can smooth it. When if you're caulking two things together, you think you're squashing together almost basically together. That is not what this window urethane is. So you're going to be applying this, and you have to go continuously. So you're applying this nice notch, and it's going to be basically a triangular bead of this urethane, which is very, very thick. And as you're applying it, you really cannot start and stop and so forth, because it's so sticky and it's so thick. It doesn't want to recontinue where you left off. So that's the one of the biggest tips.
You did actually say this more today when you were putting the bead down. You said this is the hardest part, which is hilarious.
It is the hardest part.
It, like, of all the things, and I think it's because it's physical. Like,
it's physical. So
really
you're squeezing the gun, which is a special gun.
Yeah.
But you're also awkward because you're going in a circle. So your hands get a little tired. You want to switch your hands. You're coming around things. Now you're kind of like this, and you're sort of squeezing and moving, squeezing and moving.
You were like, I can't
squeezing and moving, and then you're like, I need to shift. So you sort of have to keep the tip exactly where it is. Swap your hands, squeeze and move, and just patience with that. And it is. It's like the toughest part of this.
Yeah, and then you got to the middle where it meets, and you were like,
now
it's is it not enough? And I can't.
Yeah, you always want to
put a little bit more.
Where it meets at the bottom,
right? Because
that is, water spray can spray up when you're on the road. That is the least likely place. So you want that where you meet back to your bead to be at the bottom.
And these windows on the back, they actually have little drains at the bottom. So that was one thing we ran into trouble with this first one, is you put that thick bead down, we squish in and some of it kind of smooshed over the drain.
Yeah, and
so we had to keep clearing that. This one went much better because you were a little less aggressive. With the bead where the drains are. Yeah. So
we chose bonded bunk windows, and it's not as popular of a choice as the
clamp style.
The clamp style. So the clamp style, you're not going to use any of this urethane for the bunk sides, the bunk windows. They have a trim ring on the inside, and they basically screw to the outside, and it clamps it into the sheet metal, and that's it. We chose the bonded ones because once you have that good urethane bonded seal, that's it basically forever. You're good to go. You're not going to have a leak. Many people have the clamp style the bunk windows. They have not had a leak, but many people have had a leak.
What, they can loosen?
They can loosen. They can kind of work themselves a little loose. And when you're putting a finished wall over it, you would never know if you necessarily had a little drip leak. And so with these, we actually haven't tested these, but I have high confidence on these.
But we also liked what they look like. We liked, and we'll have pictures.
Yeah, they're very sleek.
They were similar to the front.
Yep.
Again, they're a little proud,
but
even as we were pushing down on them, and it was funny because there's really you really realize how thin sheet metal is when you're trying to push against it.
Right.
And it's, but they do sit a little away from the metal.
They will.
Like
so if you're
first
looking
like,
along the side of the
Right.
van, you're going to say, oh, the glass is sitting off of the sheet metal. And that's just how bonded windows are. The big side windows, well, they actually have a recess in the sheet metal, so you don't notice it because they sort of ease
Right.
with that seam. But the sides you do. But that's only, again, if you're looking sort of down the side and you see just notice that little gap. But otherwise, sort of that frameless glass look from the outside looks nice.
All right. Anything else on your list? Eye protection, mask, ear protection. Wear 'em.
Yeah, always. Yeah, yep.
Yes, and actually we did a couple of things. Number one is at some point you had cardboard because you were kicking up sparks.
Yep.
So you had cardboard to try to protect the back from the sparks. And then we had...
So I used a grinder to take off, and you're going to see this in many, many videos. In this particular case, in a Sprinter, it has these two support beams, and you do have to use a grinder to cut them away. In my case, some people just completely remove the whole thing. I undid them from the top, and then I did them a little bit part way down, and now they're... this one's getting rebonded. That one was already bonded at that particular point. But this sheet metal is thin and it's very flexy. And so these two sort of remaining support struts here, which are not structural, they're just really supporting that big expanse of sheet metal. Well, it's just going to help that from...
Right. So you did that, and then we also, to protect, we had like cardboard set up where we taped it up to try to protect from falling metal flakes.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And then I was holding our shop vac,
right,
and I was also, while you were jigsawing, to try to grab as much. Again, don't recommend you have so much built up yet when you're working on these, because I was just cleaning this of little metal shavings, but that all helped to try to mitigate just the amount of free metal.
Right. Yeah, we just didn't want it to fall down into the sides of the van.
Yeah.
It's fairly easy to vacuum from the floor, but we were protecting it from falling down in there. And then, of course, when I was cutting with the jigsaw, it was... I mean, I had eye protection on, I had a mask on, and it was spitting metal flakes at me. So yeah, definitely.
I think you have metal on your
on
your eye.
I might.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. We're done with windows. So
we're done with windows.
This was an important step because next we can start
the walls,
insulating, and the walls, and that is going to be cool because we're, I think, doing some cool things. No spoilers. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and don't forget you can follow us on Instagram at STBG Van Antics, as well as by visiting stbgvanantics.com.
Yeah.
Because we do share pictures and little other tidbits.
All right.
Good job.
See you next time.
Okay, you went for a ride. You went for a drive today. What happened?
I did. So on smooth roads, everything was clear and good. On bumpy roads, which we have mostly around here, is that I could hear that sort of that vibrating metal that you might hear if you say pushed on a big piece of ductwork or something. Basically, a large piece of metal vibrating. And this, as it turns out, so when you put in a bunk window and you take away these support struts, even though we had these supports adhesive against the sheet metal, this was still such a large panel of metal that it was making that noise.
Oh.
So I went immediately and got a piece of 1-inch square aluminum channel, and I notched it so that it would slide over the ribs of the framing here, and then Sikaflexed it all into place. So now this is not quite cured yet, but basically it has now created a whole rigid structure to support this sheet metal so that stops that noise. Anytime you have a noise, it's a symptom of a problem. A lot of times that problem isn't really a problem; it's just a noise that's annoying. But in this case, it was a symptom of too much movement in the sheet metal.
That would have driven us crazy.
Yeah, and you might not have heard it after the all finished wall is here and everything.
Right.
And I am going to now put some of the the vibration mat in these panels here as well, but that alone would not have solved this.
But now you know it's solid.
Movement. Right, and now I know it's solid. Yeah, and I could grab the window and I could yank it back and forth and see this whole panel of metal moving back and forth. So now it's going to be very, very solid.
Good job.
Something to consider.